Poetry, Tea and Chat with Wiltshire Libraries. My name's Peter and I'm going to be presenting this Poetry, Tea and Chat podcast live today from Devizes Library. Not in my normal, if you've watched any of my previous episodes, Poetry Cavern at home. I'm out in Devizes Library today. So I'm presenting this live a few days after National Poetry Day, which this year was on an environmental theme. So I thought that this episode could have an environmental theme as well, but also a bit of an autumn theme as it's going out in October. And the first poem that I'd like to read is an extract from Wordsworth's Prelude. And this one is also titled Shepherd in the Mist. One of the problems with doing it live from inside an office in Devizes Library is that the automatic lights switch off. Excuse me while I just wave my arms in the air. No, it's not going to go back on, so we may have a bit of a dark, I may be in a poetry cavern after all. There we go. You know, these things happen when we're going live. So I'm just going to read a little bit from Wordsworth, the Preludes, and this is entitled The Shepherd in the Mist, Man Still Subordinate to Nature. I hope also, as this is Poetry, Tea and Chat, that you've got a good tea on the go. I've got a large mug with me here. So, The Shepherd in the Mist, an extract from Wordsworth's The Prelude. A rambling schoolboy, thus I felt his presence in his own domain, as of a lord and master, or a power or genius, under nature, under God, presiding and severest solitude, had much more commanding looks when he was there. When up the lonely brook on rainy days, angling I went, or trod the trackless hills by mists bewildered, suddenly mine eyes have glanced upon him distant a few steps, in size a giant, stalking through thick fog his sheep-like Greenland bears, or, as he stepped beyond the boundary line of some hill shadow, his form hath flashed upon me, glorified by the deep radiance of the setting sun, or him have I descried in distant sky, a solitary object and sublime. I love the image that he gives, Wordsworth gives to seeing a shepherd through the mist with his sheep, like Greenland bears, which I'm guessing is polar bears, through the thick fog. That particular poem, describing Wordsworth as a child seeing shepherds immersed in their environment, made me want to just put a plug to this particular book recommendation. The Shepherd's Life by James Rebanks, available in all good Wiltshire libraries. It's about, if you're not aware of it, the writer James Rebanks comes from a long line of farmers in the Lake District, sheep farmers in the Lake District, and despite bucking against his upbringing on the farm at some points, he's always had this deep connection with the land around him, but he does go away and do a degree in English literature, but then he returns to take up a farm and farming sheep, and it's just a really interesting piece of nature writing about someone who is feels a deep connection with the land and the environment that he's grown up in, going way back through the generations in the Lake District. So that's The Shepherd's Life, A Tale of the Lake District by James Rebanks, and I thoroughly recommend that as a very interesting book of nature writing. So the next poem that I'd like to read is by one of my favourite poets, D.H. Lawrence, the writer, but also of novels, but also a poet. And this one I thought was particularly appropriate, as it's called Autumn Rain. The plane leaves fall black and wet on the lawn. The cloud sheaves in heaven's fields set droop and are drawn in falling seeds of rain and seeds of heaven on my face. Falling, I hear again, like echoes, even that softly pace. Heaven's muffled floor, the winds that tread out all the grain of tears, the store harvested in the sheaves of pain, caught up aloft, the sheaves of dead men that are slain, now winnowed soft on the floor of heaven, manna invisible, of all the pain here to us given, finely divisible, falling as rain. So that was Autumn Rain by D.H. Lawrence. There's a saying widely attributed to the Cree First Nation Americans that's become a bit of an anthem of the environmental movement. And that saying is, only when the last tree has been cut down, the last fish been caught, and the last stream poisoned, will we realise we cannot eat money. And poems with images of nature in autumn often have a melancholy atmosphere of an endangered environment, such as this one by Shakespeare. This is Sonnet 73 by William Shakespeare. That time of year thou mayest in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none, or few, do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day, as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed by that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long. So that was Sonnet 73 by William Shakespeare, and as I say, there's often a sort of crossover in poems with a nature or environmental atmosphere or setting to them, particularly those set in autumn at this time of the year, that has a sort of melancholy atmosphere of passing and finite environments and the end of the life and the full life of the summer. However, I would like to give another book recommendation, and this one is Wilding by Isabella Tree, and this one is a success story or an uplifting story full of hope in terms of the environment and the regenerative ability of the environment. Isabella Tree and her husband farmed an estate in West Sussex at a place called Knepp, and they decided to see what would happen and attempt a very ambitious project to essentially rewild the estate, which was 3,500 acres, and they've been doing this for the last over 10 years, over a decade, where they've been introducing species like longhorned cattle and Tamworth pigs to basically forage wild alongside the other large herbivores like deer on the estate. And it's an incredible transformation that has happened. It's very similar to the Wild Ken Hill nature reserve and estate that the spring, autumn and winter watch on BBC with Chris Packham is presented from. Similar idea, where they've just sort of let nature regenerate, and it's been heartening to see how much these ecosystems have regenerated, and a huge amount of wildlife has been attracted, all the way down to turtle doves, which is what's on the cover, an endangered species that's suddenly regenerated with the new cover and wildlife that's grown up there, but also purple emperor butterflies, as I say, all the way up to larger animals like deer and cows that are allowed to forage through the estate. So a really uplifting book with a lot of messages of hope. And I thought that I would follow that with a poem called Autumn by John Clare, the poet John Clare, that has just a sort of celebration of the autumn environment and this time of year. So this is Autumn by John Clare. I love the fitful gusts that shakes the casement all the day, and from the mossy elm tree takes the faded leaf away, twirling it by the window pane with 1,000 others down the lane. I love to see the shaking twig dance till the shut of eve, the shadow on the cottage rig whose chirp would make believe that spring was just now flirting by in summer's lap with flowers to lie. I love to see the cottage smoke curl upwards through the naked trees, the pigeons nestled round the cote on dull November days like these, the cock upon the dunghill crowing, the mill sails on the heath are going, the feathers from the raven's breast falls on the stubble lee, the acorns near the old crow's nest fall pattering down the tree, the grunting pigs that wait for all scramble and hurry where they fall. I really like that poem. That is Autumn by John Clare. He's written a couple actually on autumn, and so that is the one that starts, I love the fitful gusts that shakes the casement all the day, recalling the winds blowing through autumn trees. I love that image at the end of the acorns near the old crow's nest, falling pattering down the tree, the grunting pigs that wait for all scramble and hurry where they fall. And I imagined the Tamworth pigs that roam wild in the Knepp estate in Isabella Tree's book Wilding, hurrying to get those acorns. So I thought I would do a poem now by a Wessex poet, Thomas Hardy, the famous writer and also poet from this area. And the one that I thought I would do is another autumn connected one called Nighttime in Mid-Fall. I thought this one is also as appropriate, as well as it's got an almost elemental description of autumn weather, but it also, as we are in the month of Halloween, it ends with a slightly supernatural line as well. So this is Nighttime in Mid-Fall by Thomas Hardy. It is a storm-strid night, winds footing swift, through the blind profound. I know the happenings from their sound. Leaves totter down still green and spin and drift. The tree trunks rock to their roots, which wrench and lift. The loam where they run onward underground. The streams are muddy and swollen. Eels migrate to a new abode. Even cross, 'tis said, the turnpike road. Men's feet have felt their crawl homecoming late. The westward fronts of towers are saturate. Church timbers crack and witches ride abroad. That was Nighttime in Mid-Fall by Thomas Hardy. Another book recommendation. Robert Macfarlane, The Wild Places. Robert Macfarlane was involved in this year's National Poetry Day in various books that he's written about interacting with wild and nature, including one called The Lost Words, about various natural images, words for natural images that were being removed from a children's dictionary, and he felt that he wanted to save these by putting them in a beautifully illustrated book. So that's The Lost Words by Robert Macfarlane. But the one that I was going to recommend, this one here, The Wild Places, is just a fantastic piece of nature writing by one of this country's leading nature writers. And it's just a description of some of the places that, even in a country that is so well populated as Great Britain, there are still places where there's incredible wildness and just a beautiful environment that you can go in that's almost unspoiled by man. So that's The Wild Places by Robert Macfarlane, and I heartily recommend anything that Robert Macfarlane has written. That's just the one that came to hand from my own bookshelves, but as I say, all these books are available from Wiltshire Libraries. Please do seek them out. So, what can we have for our last poem today? I think I'm going to go for one of Ireland's greatest poets, W.B. Yeats, and this is The Wild Swans at Coole. Also inspired by this time of year when he was watching some swans one October evening. So this is The Wild Swans at Coole by W.B. Yeats. The trees are in their autumn beauty, the woodland paths are dry. Under the October twilight, the water mirrors a still sky. Upon the brimming water, among the stones, are 59 swans. The 19th autumn has come upon me since I first made my count. I saw before I had well finished all suddenly mount and scatter, wheeling in great broken rings upon their clamorous wings. I have looked upon those brilliant creatures, and now my heart is sore. All's changed since I, hearing at twilight the first time on this shore, the bell beat of their wings above my head, trod with a lighter tread. Unwearied still, lover by lover, they paddle in the cold. Companionable streams or climb the air, their hearts have not grown old. Passion or conquest wander where they will, attend upon them still. But now they drift on the still water, mysterious, beautiful. Among what rushes will they build? By what lake's edge or pool delight men's eyes when I awake some day to find they have flown away? So that was The Wild Swans at Coole by W.B. Yeats. So that's the last poem for this session of Poetry Tea and Chat. But just a couple of things to mention before we finish. And that is, if you're watching this live in October 2022, then we have a couple of climate-related events happening at Devizes Library, where I'm broadcasting this from today. The first is Climate Lunch at Devizes Library on Friday the 28th of October. That's 12 noon to 1:30. And the idea is that you bring along a lunch to Devizes Library and join us here for helpful conversations on climate change, carbon reduction and green issues. And this is a free activity, but booking is required. So please do contact Devizes Library if you'd like to come along to the Climate Lunch on Friday the 28th of October at 12 noon. Okay, there we are. That is the poster there. Check out the Devizes Library's Facebook page for more details if you want to, or just come down and speak to them at the library. The second event is an author event. The next day, on Saturday 29th of October at 10:30, the author Jen Gale is going to be at Devizes Library, and she's going to be doing a relaxed session for eco-warriors, as she describes them, all about the importance of imperfect eco-action, packed with tips and ideas for simple changes we can all make that make a big difference. So again, this is a free activity, but booking is required, so please do contact Devizes Library if you'd like to come along to that. Jen Gale is the author of the Sustainable-ish Living Guide and the Sustainable-ish Guide to Green Parenting, which she is described as guilt-free eco-ideas for raising your kids. Okay, so that's Jen Gale at Devizes Library on Saturday the 29th of October. Do contact the library if you'd like to come along to either of those environment-related events. So I hope you've enjoyed today's Poetry Tea and Chat with me, Peter. I hope you have enjoyed a nice cup of tea while you've been listening. Sorry about the lighting, but it is in keeping with my usual episodes when I'm presenting from darkened rooms. So I hope to see you next time that I'm doing one of the Poetry Tea and Chats from Wiltshire Libraries. I hope you enjoyed today's. Bye-bye for now.